The last thing Nora did before she disappeared was leave a note on her bathroom mirror. Not on paper, not on her phone. She wrote it in red lipstick, directly on the glass. It said, "Don't look at it. Whatever you do, don't look at it when it looks back." Nobody knew what she meant. Her sister assumed she'd had some kind of breakdown. The police assumed the same. They photographed the mirror, logged it as evidence, and then, because it was just a mirror, they put it in a box and sent it to auction with the rest of her estate. That's how it ended up in Marcus Webb's living room. And that's where this story really starts. Marcus was 34, recently divorced, recently relocated, recently everything. He'd moved into the Elmwood apartment in late October, a place he'd found online, rented sight unseen because he couldn't stand another week sleeping on his brother's couch in Portland. He needed a fresh start. That's what he told himself. That's what divorced people say when they mean they need somewhere to fall apart in private. The apartment was nice enough. High ceilings, old wooden floors that groaned when you walked near the kitchen, a radiator that hissed like it had opinions. He didn't have much furniture yet. A mattress on a frame, a folding table he used as a desk, a couch he'd ordered online that arrived with a broken leg he never got around to fixing. The walls were bare. That bothered him more than he expected. Bare walls in a new place have a way of reminding you that nothing feels like yours yet. Nothing feels claimed. So when he walked past the vintage shop on Carver Street, a narrow, cluttered little place that smelled like old wood and mothballs, and saw the mirror in the window, he stopped. It was striking. That's the honest word for it. A tall oval mirror with a dark mahogany frame, maybe 5 feet high. The frame was carved with thin, winding vines that curled around the glass in a way that seemed almost too intricate to be machine-made. The glass itself had that slight amber tint that old mirrors get, a warmth to it, like candlelight lived inside. He paid $240 for it. The shopkeeper, a small woman with silver hair and reading glasses perpetually pushed up on her forehead, wrapped it in moving blankets and didn't say much. Except one thing. As Marcus was loading it into his car, she appeared in the doorway and said quietly, "It's been returned twice, you know. Just so you know." He laughed. "What? It doesn't match people's decor?" She didn't laugh back. He drove home. He hung the mirror on the wall across from his couch. It looked perfect. The first thing that felt wrong wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a sound in the dark. It was a Tuesday morning. Marcus was running late for a video call with a client. He worked remotely, graphic design, the kind of job that lets you wear sweatpants at 10 a.m. and call it a career. And he passed the mirror in the hallway, glanced at his reflection, and kept moving. But then he stopped. He walked back. He looked again. His reflection looked fine. Him. Exactly. Unshaved, coffee mug in hand, slightly puffy around the eyes the way he always looked before noon. Except he was holding the mug in his right hand. His reflection was holding it in the left. He stared at that for a long moment. His brain ran through the logic. Mirrors reverse left and right. That's just how mirrors work. That's just physics. He knew that. He'd always known that. But something about seeing it that morning, in that particular light, made his stomach do something it had no good reason to do. He went to his call. He forgot about it. 3 days later, he was shaving, standing right in front of the mirror, which he'd moved into the bathroom by then because the lighting was better. Steam from the shower still fogged the corners of the glass. He had the razor against his jaw, pulling it slow, watching his reflection do the same. And then he blinked. His reflection blinked. Half a second later, he stood there, razor in hand, and blinked again, deliberately, slowly. His reflection blinked in sync, normal, like a mirror. He spent the next 20 minutes trying to catch it again. He couldn't. He told himself he'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress. The divorce had done a number on him. His therapist had said so 6 months ago, before he'd stopped going. The brain plays tricks on a grieving person. Even grief that comes from the end of a marriage and not the end of a life. He believed himself. Almost. Here's what Marcus didn't know yet. What he had no way of knowing is that the mirror had a history. Not the vague, romantic kind of history that antique dealers imply to justify their prices. A specific, documented, disturbing history. And somewhere in that history was a woman named Nora, and a note written in red lipstick, and the name of at least one other person who had owned this mirror before either of them. We'll get to that. But first, what happened on the night of October 29th? Because that's the night the mirror stopped pretending. Marcus couldn't sleep. He'd been lying on his mattress for 2 hours, phone face down, the radiator ticking and hissing. He got up for water, walked through the living room in the dark. The mirror caught the streetlight from the window. A thin, pale rectangle of it lay across the glass, illuminating just enough. Marcus stood still. His reflection stood in the glass across the room. He raised his hand slowly. His reflection did not move. He stood absolutely still, his hand in the air. His reflection just standing there, hands at its sides, looking at him. He told himself his eyes were adjusting to the dark. He told himself the angle was off. He told himself all the things you tell yourself when your body knows something your mind is refusing to accept. He lowered his hand. His reflection lowered its hand a full 3 seconds later. And then, this is the part that made Marcus back against the far wall and stay there until morning. His reflection smiled. Marcus had not smiled. He didn't tell anyone. Of course he didn't. What do you say? Hey, my mirror smiled at me. I think I need a priest? He was a grown man in his mid-30s who believed in Wi-Fi and project deadlines and the restorative power of a good whiskey. Not this. He covered the mirror with a bedsheet and went about his week. But he also, and this is the part that reveals the kind of person Marcus actually was, he also started researching. He went back to the vintage shop. The woman with the reading glasses told him she'd acquired the mirror from an estate sale. A woman named Nora Callahan, who'd lived over on Mercer Street, who had disappeared in February, who was listed in the county records as a missing person. Marcus looked Nora up online that night. There wasn't much. A social media profile that hadn't been updated in 8 months, a few tagged photos at a birthday party, some friend's wedding. She looked ordinary, happy even. 31 years old, a dental hygienist. She had a cat named Pickles. But then he found a forum. A paranormal forum, the kind he'd usually scroll past with the mild contempt of a rational person. But he was not feeling particularly rational right now. The thread was titled, "Has anyone else experienced the Callahan mirror?" He read through the night. Here's what the thread revealed, and this is the first real twist. Nora wasn't the first. Before Nora, the mirror had belonged to a man named David Holt, a photographer from Asheville. He'd written about it in exhaustive detail across 4 different forums over the course of 8 months. A slow, escalating account of everything that had happened to him with the mirror. It started the way it started with Marcus. Small wrongnesses. A reflection, a beat out of sync. A posture that didn't quite match. He'd dismissed them too. But David had noticed something that Marcus hadn't yet. David had noticed that the reflection had been changing. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, the way a dial turns, the way light shifts through an afternoon. The reflection had begun to look different from David. Older, David wrote. Tired in a way I wasn't, like a version of me that had lived a harder life. And then, about 6 months in, David had posted one final message. I think it's been watching me so that it can learn me. I think it's practicing. He never posted again. Marcus searched David Holt's name in the county records. David Holt was listed as a missing person, reported by his sister in January of the previous year, before Nora. The mirror had taken 2 people, and Marcus had owned it for 3 weeks. He pulled the bedsheet off the mirror at midnight. He needed to see it. He needed to look at his reflection and see if it was still him. He stood in front of the glass. His reflection stared back. It was him. Exactly him. The same unshaved jaw, the same wrinkled t-shirt, the same dark circles under the eyes. Except his reflection's eyes were calm. Marcus's hands were shaking. His reflection's hands were not. He didn't sleep that night. He sat across the room from the mirror with the lights on and watched it. He needed to catch it out of sync. He needed evidence, something he could show someone, something that would make a person believe him. He held his phone up and filmed himself in front of the mirror for 40 minutes. He watched the footage back. This is the second reveal. In the footage, his reflection was perfectly normal. Synchronized, accurate, every blink and shift matching his own. But for 17 seconds in the middle of the recording, while Marcus had looked down at his phone, his reflection in the footage had not looked down. It had kept looking straight ahead, straight out of the mirror, straight at the camera. He called his brother in Portland. It was 2 a.m. His brother's name was Cal. And Cal was the kind of person who answered the phone at 2 a.m. without complaint, because he was a genuinely good human being who worried about Marcus constantly and had since the divorce. Marcus couldn't explain it cleanly. He talked in circles. He said, "There's something wrong with my mirror," and then felt how insane that sounded and said, "I think I'm not sleeping enough," and then felt how untrue that sounded. Cal was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You want me to come down there?" "No." "Marcus?" "No, I'm fine. I needed to hear a voice." After he hung up, Marcus sat in his kitchen and drank cold coffee and tried to think through this like a rational adult. 2 people had gone missing after owning this mirror. That was real. That was documented. Whatever the explanation, gas leak, psychological suggestion, something he was too close to think clearly about, there was something wrong with this object. And the rational response to an object that might be dangerous was simple. Get rid of it. He decided to move it to his car in the morning, drive it to the county dump. Done. He went to bed. He slept, finally, from about 4 to 7. When he woke up, he walked to the bathroom on autopilot, sleep heavy and slow. He stood at the sink, turned on the water, looked up at the mirror. His reflection looked back and said, very quietly, in a voice that sounded almost exactly like his own, "You're not going to get rid of me." Marcus stumbled backward into the wall. His shoulder hit the towel rack. He stood there, breathing like he'd been running, staring at the glass. His reflection stared back, mouth closed, still. He hadn't imagined it. He knew he hadn't. The voice had come from inside the mirror, or from behind the mirror, or from somewhere that had no good explanation. It had been quiet and close, the way someone speaks when they're standing beside you in the dark. He grabbed his keys, his jacket, his phone. He left the apartment. He drove to the library because he couldn't think of anywhere else to go, and it opened at 8. He sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes until the doors unlocked. He started searching for anything he could find about antique mirrors with documented histories of paranormal activity in the Pacific Northwest. It sounded absurd even as he typed it. He found folklore, he found Reddit threads, he found a lot of nonsense. And then he found something that wasn't nonsense. The third reveal. A digitized archive from a regional historical society. A newspaper clipping from 1962, the Carver County Gazette, about a local antique dealer named Harlan Pruitt, who had acquired a large collection of European furniture and decorative pieces from a private estate in Belgium. One item in the shipment had caused what the article called significant distress among the staff at Pruitt's warehouse. Workers had complained of seeing their reflections move independently. 2 had quit within a week. Harlan Pruitt himself had given an interview. In it, he'd said something that Marcus had to read 3 times before it landed fully. The piece in question is a mirror of Venetian construction, believed to be from the early 18th century. The local artisans who made such pieces were known for using a specific method. They would mix a small quantity of their own blood into the backing compound of the glass, believing it gave the mirror a kind of soul. Whether this is merely legend or something more substantial, I cannot say. What I can tell you is that my restorer examined the backing compound and found that it was not mercury, as was standard. He couldn't identify what it was. He said it was unlike anything he'd seen. "I will not be selling this piece," Pruitt had added. "I intend to have it destroyed." Harlan Pruitt died in November 1962, 2 months after that article ran. The mirror had not been destroyed. Marcus sat in the library for a long time after that. He thought about what it meant. Not the supernatural angle. He was still resisting that, still holding it at arm's length. But the psychological angle. If something in the glass, some compound, some chemical, some property he couldn't name, was capable of inducing visual and auditory hallucinations in multiple people across multiple decades, that was almost worse, wasn't it? That was a threat that a priest couldn't solve. That was a threat that lived in his nervous system now, not just on his wall. He drove back to the apartment. He had to get rid of it. He wasn't going back in without a plan. He bought a moving blanket from a hardware store. Heavy-duty work gloves. He told himself the gloves were for grip, not because he was afraid to touch the frame with his bare hands. Maybe that was even true. He stood outside his apartment door for a full minute before he put the key in. The apartment was quiet. Afternoon light came through the kitchen window, soft and pale, The mirror stood against the bathroom wall where he'd left it, covered by the bedsheet. He moved quickly, crossed the room, threw the moving blanket over the bedsheet, got his hands around the frame. The mirror was heavy, heavier than he remembered from when he'd hung it. He wrestled it off the wall hook, felt it tilt dangerously, caught it. He turned it face down against the floor, canvas blanket between the glass and the hardwood. He exhaled. He started dragging it toward the door. And then the mirror spoke again. Not a whisper this time. Not something you could almost convince himself was his imagination. It was a full voice. His voice, but wrong in the way that a recording of your own voice sounds wrong. And it came from beneath the blanket, from the glass facing the floor. And it said, "You can't take me anywhere I don't want to go, Marcus." He let go of the frame, stepped back. "You've been reading about the others," the voice said. Conversational, almost gentle. David, Nora, you think you know what happened to them. Marcus's throat was dry. He made himself speak. What did happen to them? A pause. They stayed too long. I learned them completely. Every gesture, every habit, every way they moved through a room. And when I knew them well enough, when my reflection and their reality had swapped enough times that neither of us could tell the difference, they stopped being necessary. They disappeared, Marcus said. His voice was steadier than he expected. Where did they go? Where do you think? He thought about that, about David's final forum post. I think it's been watching me so that it can learn me. I think it's practicing. About Nora's note. Don't look at it when it looks back. You put them inside, Marcus said. You swapped them. No answer. You were going to do the same thing to me. I was. I'm close. You've been here 23 days. I know how you hold your mug. I know how you tilt your head when you're thinking. I know your sleeping posture and your typing rhythm and the way your hands shake when you're frightened, which is, incidentally, right now. Marcus looked down at his hands. They were shaking. The problem, the voice continued, is that you're the first one who figured it out before I was ready. David got close, but not close enough. Nora knew at the end. You knew earlier. So what happens now? Now, you have a choice. You can try to leave, but you'll come back. They always come back, because part of them always knows I'm here, and part of them always wants to look. Or you can look at me right now, lift this blanket, and we can finish this. Finish it how? You look at me, I look at you. One of us walks out of this apartment. I'll let you decide which one. Marcus stood there in the quiet of the apartment. The radiator hissed. He made his decision. He crouched down, got his hands on the edge of the moving blanket, and he threw it aside. But he didn't look at the glass. He kept his eyes on the frame, on the mahogany, vine-carved edges. And with his eyes averted, like a man diffusing something he couldn't fully see, he picked the mirror up. He walked to the window. A second-floor drop to the alley below. You can't, the voice said, no longer calm. I've been here 300 years. You cannot destroy me. I'm not trying to destroy you, Marcus said. I'm returning you. He shoved the mirror through the open window. The sound it made when it hit the alley was enormous, A crack like a gunshot, and then the rain-on-pavement scatter of 1,000 pieces of old glass across old concrete. The apartment went silent. The radiator stopped hissing. Marcus stood at the window, not looking down, just breathing. In and out. In and out. He waited for the voice. It didn't come. He waited another 5 minutes. 10. He moved slowly through the apartment, touching things. The counter, the back of the couch, his own face, the solid, ordinary reality of everything around him. His hands had stopped shaking. He walked to the bathroom. The wall where the mirror had been was bare. He stood there, looking at the wall. And then, slowly, he looked at his phone's front-facing camera, his reflection in the small screen. It blinked when he blinked. It moved when he moved. Just his face. Just him. He exhaled in a way that emptied him completely. He called Cal that night, told him almost everything. Cal was quiet for a long time, and then said, "So you threw a $240 mirror out a window?" "Yeah." "And you feel better?" "Yeah." "Okay," Cal said. And the simple, unconditional okay of it. No questions, no skepticism, just his brother taking him at his word, made Marcus's eyes sting in a way he wasn't prepared for. He didn't move out of the apartment. He'd considered it, but moving felt like running, and he was tired of running. He'd been running since the divorce, from Portland, from the empty house, from the version of himself that had failed at something he thought would last forever. He was done with that. He bought a painting for the wall where the mirror had been. Nothing special, a landscape print from a craft market, a little garish, too many oranges and yellows. He loved it. He never found out what happened to David Holt or Nora Callahan. That's the part that stayed with him. Not the voice in the glass, not the reflection that smiled, but the not knowing. The two people who hadn't gotten out. He thought about filing a report, but what would he say? He thought about going back to that forum, but he didn't know what to write. He thought about a lot of things. He did one thing, though. He found the estate sale company that had cleared Nora's apartment, asked them about the condition of the mirror when they'd acquired it. The woman on the phone was professional, unhelpful in the way that estate sale people are trained to be. But as he was about to hang up, she said, "Oh, actually, there was a note on the mirror. Lipstick. We photographed it before we cleaned it off. Hold on." She emailed him the photo. He opened it. The lipstick on the glass, in Nora's handwriting. Don't look at it. Whatever you do, don't look at it when it looks back. But underneath, smaller, in different handwriting, writing he didn't recognize, there was a second line that hadn't been visible in any of the police photographs. Either it hadn't been there when the police came, or it had only appeared later. It said, "David tried the window too." Marcus stared at that for a long time. Then he closed his phone, set it face down on the table. He sat in his apartment with the garish painting and the hissing radiator and the groaning floors, and he didn't look at anything reflective for the rest of the night.